Good morning. Today we are talking about proportional relationships. A proportional relationship is when the y-intercept, so in other words our y-intercept in the form y equals mx plus b, so when our y-intercept or when b is 0, so instead of a b it would be a 0, it's called proportional. Or we also call this direct variation. We call this direct variation because the line goes directly, you can insert that word in there, directly through the origin, or the middle of the graph. So proportional is just another way to say direct variation. So if you look at the equation here, y equals mx plus b, you notice that here there's no b, because b is really a 0. So you can write plus 0 like this one does, but you don't have to. You can just write y equals mx. So there's a graph here, but there's no equations because I'm not really looking at an equation. I just want to make the point that a proportional graph would go directly through the origin. So it could be, like this one is, a positive slope, or it also could be a negative slope. This one would be walking downhill. It doesn't matter what the angle is as long as it goes through the origin. So we could have hundreds of lines that go through the origin. I could keep going and going and going. But the point is, if it doesn't go through the origin like that one, this one would be not proportional. All the rest are proportional, and I just shortened the word PROP instead of writing out the whole word. If you also want to just use direct variation, you can. They mean the same thing. So direct variation, proportional graphs go through the origin, 0, 0. So tell whether the equation represents a proportional relationship. Identify the slope. So there are two ways we could do this. We could just look at the equation. So if you're just given an equation, looking at the form y equals mx plus b, well, we just learned that proportional graphs have a b of 0, so they would be y equals mx plus b when b is 0. This one, b is a negative 2, so we know right away it is not proportional. And we can also look at the graph. Here's the origin, it doesn't go through it, so we know it is not proportional. So you really don't need the graph and the equation, you can tell from either. So this one, there's something wrong with this graph. We always have to have our equations solved for y. And this one does not have y by itself, so I'm going to draw my line down to get y by itself. So first, I know this is 1x, so I'm going to put a 1 there. And we want the y all by itself, and it's multiplied by 4. So we are going to divide by 4 on both sides. 4 over 4 cancels out, and we're left with y equals, and this is 1 over 4x. This is in the form y equals mx plus b. And if you notice, it just has y equals mx. There's no b there, so we can assume that it is 0. So right away, we know this is proportional because it goes through the origin, 0. Or you could look here. If you wanted, b is 0, so you'd start at 0, and then we'd rise 1 and go over 4. Rise over 1, or down 1, 4 to the left. It's already graphed for you, and we know it goes through 0, 0, so it is proportional. Here are a couple more graphs. Direct variation, meaning it goes directly through the origin, or proportional. I like to write y equals mx plus b underneath my equation. And these ones aren't graphed. We need to do just that, graph it. So if you'd like to identify m and b, go ahead and do that. Some of you can graph it just by looking at the equation. This is in the form y equals mx plus b, and b is 0, and m is 2 over 3. Our slope is always a fraction. So we're beginning at 0 on our y-axis, Remember, B is really our y-intercept, or where we're crossing the y-axis. And then use our slope, 2 over 3, to create the line. Rise 2, and run 1, 2, 3. All I'm doing is going up 2 and 3 to the right. Again, from here, up 2 and 1, 2, 3 to the right. Up 2 and 1, 2, 3 to the right. So that creates my line going to the right, but instead of going up and right, I can also go down and left to go the opposite way. Down 2 and 3 to the left. Down 2, 1, 2, 3 to the left. And then I can draw my line that direction as well. This is proportional. It goes through 0, 0. Let's take a look at our next line. This one, I also need to solve for y so that we can have it in function form, or the form y equals mx plus b. So this is really a negative 1x, so I need to get rid of that 4. I need to divide by 4 on both sides. So I get y equals negative 1/4 x. So if we look here, this is in the form y equals mx plus b. So m is negative 1 over 4. And b, there's nothing there, it would be plus 0. So b is for beginning on our y-axis, our y-intercept. So we're beginning at 0. And our slope is down 1 because it's negative 1. And then positive 4 is to the right. So from the middle, just because that's where our point is, we're going down 1 and positive 4 is to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing again, down 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. Going the opposite direction, we go up 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. Up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. So first we went down and right, this direction, and then we went up and left, up and left. And there's our line. Quick reminder that make sure you always solve for y first, or get y all by itself. So now, graph the equation, that's our first step. And then it says, identify if it is proportional. So I'm going to put down here, yes or no. So yes, it's proportional, or no, it's not. I'm just going to circle one at the end once I graph it. So this is in the form y equals mx plus b. So m, my slope is 5, or 5 over 1. And then b, my y-intercept, where I'm starting on the y-axis, is not just 4, it's negative 4. So let's begin right here at negative 4 on my y-axis. And then my slope is rise 5 and run 1. Rise over run. Up 5. From this point now, not from the middle, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1. Up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1. I could also go the other way, down 5. Oh, but I can't go that way, so those are the only points I can plot, just those 3. And put my arrows on the ends. Our last one like this, oh, we forgot over here. Is this proportional? We could tell right away from our equation that it's not plus 0, it's minus 4. So no, this is not proportional. It does not go through 0, 0. So let's take a look at our next one. This one is already solved for y. It's in the form y equals mx plus b. So m is 5, or 5 over 1. And b, there's nothing there, so I can assume it's nothing, 0. So we're going to begin on our y-axis. There's y, there's x. For those of you that forget, the letter y is longer up and down, so that's why it goes on the y-axis. So we're beginning at 0 in the middle, And our slope is rise over run. Rise 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1. Instead of going up and right, we can also go down and left. So down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 to the left. Draw your line through. Now this one is proportional. Yes, it is proportional because b is 0, and you can see it goes right through the origin. So we really have two pieces of evidence to support our claim that this is a proportional graph. So if I said explain why, you could list those two reasons, because our equation y equals mx plus b has a b of 0, or that it goes to the origin, or it crosses the y-axis at 0. Alright, couple more problems. It says write the equation of the proportional relationship. So right away when they say equation, we know they mean y equals mx plus b. Then there's a part 2, but we're going to deal with that after. So first, we need an equation. We need to find m, which is our slope, and b, which is our y-intercept. Sorry if you could hear that noise. There was a car alarm going off in the background. So first, I like to start in alphabetical order and find b, where I cross the y-axis, or the y-intercept. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to highlight my y-axis. Oops, there we go. And look for where does my line, my blue line right here, cross the y-axis. Well, it crosses right in the middle right there at 0. So if you want, you can write b equals 0, or just plug it in your equation right below. And then I also need to find m, my slope. Reminder that slope is rise over run. So we're going to count how many are we going up and down, how many squares are we going up and down, and then how many are we going left to right. In order to do that, we need 2 points. We have one point right here that they gave us, and another point right here, which we just added. It's the origin. We know it goes through that point. So from one to the other, I'm rising or going down 1, 2, so at -2, and over 1, 2. Be careful that you're going straight down and straight over. Some of you have been counting 1 like that. That went from this corner to this corner. This counts down 1 and then over 1. So be careful how you're counting your slope. We know 2 divided by 2 is just 1, so our answer is really just -1. So in our equation here, the y is just the letter y. Our slope, m, we just figured out right there, it's -1. And then x is just the letter x. So we have y equals mx plus b. There's our equation when we just plugged in m, which is -1, and b, which is 0. The second part just says, now find the value of y. So what is y when x is 10? So we're just going to take the 10 and plug it in for x, because it says when x is 10. So I'm just going to rewrite this equation, y equals -1, but we're multiplying by x, which is really a 10, and then plus 0. Well, we know anything times itself is just that number, so -1 times 10 is just -10. So -10 plus 0 is still -10. So what does this mean? It says find y when x is 10. I'm sorry, yeah, 10. So if we were to follow this line out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if this line extended all the way out, our blue line here, let me get a different pen. Here we go. This blue line, if that were to extend out as well, that's telling us that when x is 10 over here at 10, we could follow that to our line, and y over here, I know this is a little bit crazy because there's lots of lines going on, y would be at -10. So this would be a -1, -2, all the way down here at -10 is where our graph would match. So if that was a little confusing, we're going to go over another problem just like it. Hopefully it makes it a little bit more clear. All right. So next we're going to do the same thing, write an equation in the form y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to find b first, where we begin our graph on the y-axis. So this line crosses the y-axis at 0, so I know b is 0, so I have that. And then I'm going to find our slope, which I just moved down here. Slope is counting rise over run. So from this point to this point, I'm rising or going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And straight to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the rest of my equation would be y equals m, which is 5 over 4, x, and then plus 0. You don't need to write plus 0, but it shows me that you found what b is. And now it says find y. What is y when x is 10? So we're going to take this x, and instead we're going to plug in a 10. So I'm just going to rewrite this. Y equals 5 over 4 times 10 plus 0. So if we multiply this, 5 over 4 times 10, well, 10 is the same as 10 over 1, so we can multiply straight across. 5 times 10 is 50. 4 times 1 is 4. So 50 divided by 4, that's when I would plug in my calculator, and I would get 12.5. So when we multiply those two numbers, we get y equals 12.5. So let's take a look to see if that makes sense. It's asking us what's y when x is 10. So if we were to go on our x-axis all the way over to 10, way over here, I'm going to move this out of the way. Oops, I'm just going to delete it. If I was to go over to 10 and follow it up to this blue line, I would have to go straight up at 10. On my y-axis, I would be at 12.5. I would be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would be crossing that point way up there at 10, would cross over here at 12.5. That's what that means. So we're predicting outside of the data that we have. Okay? Our last slide is a little bit tricky at first, but it's really pretty simple. It says, tell whether the table represents a proportional relationship, meaning y varies directly with x. Direct means direct variation, or proportional, same. If so, write an equation. So this is the form y equals mx plus b, but since b is 0, we just didn't write it. So they want us to find our slope. They told us that this is already going through the origin 0, 0 because they're telling us it's a proportional graph. So all we have to do is find m. So I'm going to go back to what we know about equations, and I'm going to get m all by itself. It's touching the x, so the opposite of multiplying would be divide. And to get rid of multiplying by x, I would divide by x. So x over x goes away, and we have our slope is just whatever y is divided by whatever x is. So I'm going to take my y value and divide it by my x value, and if it's the same number over and over and over again, that tells me that my slope is constant, or it's a proportional relationship. If it doesn't, then it's not a proportional relationship. So first, y is 5, and I'm going to divide it by x, which is 1. I'm just taking y divided by x. Well, 5 divided by 1 is 5. So now y divided by x again. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So far, if I was to graph this, I would have a nice straight line. My slope is 5 over 1, 5 over 1. Because 5 is as a fraction, 5 over 1. If I keep going, 15 divided by 3 is also 5. 20 divided by 4 is also 5. And 30 divided by 6 is also 5. So if it's proportional, we need to write our equation. So what we just found was our slope, m. So our equation, back up here to our original equation, it would be y equals m, which is 5x. That's our equation with our slope. So let's try the same thing over here. We're going to take y and we're going to divide it by x. So y is -2. We're dividing it by -3. Two negatives here make a positive. 2 divided by 3 in my calculator would give me 0.6. Repeating. So we need to have all the rest of these be 0.6 in order to create a nice straight line. If they're not the same, that's telling you that your slope's going up, then it might be going down, then it might be going flat, then it might be going up. That's not going to create a straight line. We're in linear algebra. We need our slope to be the same over and over and over again. So y is 0, and we're dividing by x, which is -1. Well, 0 divided by anything is 0. You guys, I don't even have to keep going. I know that this is not proportional. It's not forming the same straight slope. And then our last two here, we're going to take y and divide by x. Just like our slope formula has y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, this one has y on the top and x on the bottom as well. So 6 divided by 1, well, that's just 6. Then y divided by x again, 12 divided by 2, oh, that's also 6, looks good so far. 18 divided by 3, yep, that's 6. 24 divided by 4, yep. And 36 divided by 6. Well, 6 times 6 is 36. So yes, this is proportional. And that means our equation in the form y equals mx plus b, you don't really need b because it's proportional, goes through the origin 0, would be y equals 6x because we found our slope. Y over x is just our slope. And our last one, take y and divide by x. 6 divided by 8. In my calculator, 6 divided by 8, that's 3 over 4 or 0.75. Here, y divided by x, we have -12 divided by -4. Those two negatives make a positive. Well, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So these are not the same number. This one is not proportional. All right, good luck on your homework.